welcome to the show. Welcome.
It's great to be here. You have a great set, studio audience. It's pretty awesome.
You know, you
Congratulations.
hosted your own cable access show.
I did.
In the 80s. It was called Your Mother's on the Roof.
7 years. Your Mother's on the Roof.
I'm on year 5 of this guy.
Good for
What
you.
was your studio like in Your Mother's on the Roof? Was it anything like this?
It was almost like it. Yours is a little bigger, much nicer, the equipment much more modern. And we did the show for 7 years on Norwood Cable, and it also ran in Cambridge. And we had friends around the country. It ran in LA for a while because we had a friend who worked at a cable station there, so it ran there. It was fun. It was live. We had a live band. We would take live calls.
Okay.
And you're doing the same thing here. This is pretty awesome. The studio audience is very, very nice. There's Jennifer, who
Oh, hey, Jen.
we all met at Worcester State.
Yes,
correct?
we met at Worcester
Okay.
State in a
Okay.
Beatles theme class there taught by the great Steve Minicello.
Yes, he emailed me earlier wishing me the best today. He's a good guy.
Yeah, he's amazing.
That was pretty awesome.
Speaking of college,
Yes.
you never went to college.
No, I never went to college.
I'm told that you never went to college. I'm told, at least, I have to go to college to work in TV. You never went to college.
Well, life.
How did you get started in radio?
It was a lot different back then. You could actually go and intern at TV or radio, and that's what I did. I volunteered, and I worked for a year for free. So I graduated high school and worked for a bunch of years at Polaroid, but I always wanted to work in radio. That was my dream, radio, and beyond that, it was my dream to work for WBCN. But it all goes back to 1964 when I saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show, and I realized I couldn't be a Beatle, but I heard DJs talking to them, and I saw TV guys like you talking to them, and I said, well, I'd like to meet the Beatles, and one way to do that is to, be a DJ. So in high school, I would go to the library in Cambridge and read about how to be a DJ, and then I eventually sat down and wrote a letter to Charles Laquadaria at WBCN. A few days later, I got a call, and then a few days after that, I was answering the request line 24 hours a day. Saturday night, I went in on a Saturday night from 7 p.m., left at 7 a.m., and that started my volunteer portion of my BCN
That's
years.
an interesting overnight shift you had that first night at
Well,
BCN.
I wasn't on the air. I was answering phones, taking requests.
Yes.
But within a year, they had hired me, and I left my my boring job at Polaroid, and I never left. I'm still in radio over 35 years later.
That's crazy.
Pretty awesome. I lucked out. Life's so much different today. You can't walk in and say, hey, I'll do anything you need. They actually had a waiting list of 200 people that wanted to do it. And they just put me right up in front based on my letter.
Yes.
It was great. It was awesome. I was very lucky.
So let me ask you, your real name is Larry.
Lawrence.
Lawrence. It's Lawrence.
Anthony Loprette.
I would have never known that because you go
Yeah.
by ChaChi.
Well, that was the radio name given to me right after I started at WBCN.
Okay.
And it was given, said, you need to have a recognizable name, something people are going to remember. And they were right, and they just gave me ChaChi, and before you know it, people just started calling me ChaChi, and that's how I'm known for the most part.
But George Harrison was never interviewed by ChaChi.
No, that was early on. I got to interview, and I remember that because I was ChaChi then, but we just started out by, I introduced myself as Larry, and that's how it started. But he does, that one time, yeah, he mentioned me as Larry.
Okay.
But not Ringo. Ringo calls me ChaChi, and Paul as well. Although Ringo I've gotten to know a little bit of an acquaintance.
Yeah.
Over the years.
You just walk in the room and he's like, hey, ChaChi, ChaChi,
Well,
ChaChi.
he does that,
Yeah.
yeah. And he's coming back in September to the Bach Center, and we're doing a big thing with him there. My show is sponsoring an art show. Hasn't been announced yet, but we're going to do an art show where you can purchase some of Ringo's art and you get to meet him. So that's in September.
So what was it like? Okay, we can talk about Breakfast with the Beatles in a little bit, but you're already talking about it. Meeting Beatles, you've gotten a job at a Polaroid with an internship.
Yes.
You've met Beatles. We've had pictures of you with Paul McCartney, if we can find those. We have pictures of you and Paul and you and Ringo. So let me ask you about Paul first off. There's a picture that you sent to me with Paul. We're getting it up in a little bit.
Sure.
How did you meet Paul at this occasion?
Well, on this particular...
There you two are.
Okay,
hey!
oh, that's an interesting story. That was in New York, in Queens, a bunch of years ago, maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. And see, I'm also friends with Tony Bennett.
Yeah, we got a picture of Tony in there somewhere.
And I've known Tony for a bunch of years because I was the first radio guy to play his music.
There's you and Tony, look.
Oh yeah, that's a long time. That's an old picture.
Oh, I can't be
that was
old.
at the Super
You almost
Bowl.
look exactly the same as you
Yeah,
now.
thank you.
Minus the shades, of course, because of
yes,
indoors.
that was taken at the Super Bowl when he played the Super Bowl many, many years ago. But the picture with Paul, prior to that, Tony opened a school in Queens called the Frank Sinatra School of the Arts. Him and his wife, Tony and his wife, Susan, opened the school, and it became a part of the New York City public school system. And so Tony and Paul are friends, and Tony asked him, hey, would you come and play a private show for the students? He agreed, and then I got an invitation to join them. So I went to Queens, New York, and went to the show, and Tony brought us backstage. And that photo is backstage after the show in Queens at the Frank Sinatra School of the Arts. But I had met Paul in '86 when I interviewed him about a movie he did called Give My Regards to Broad Street. I interviewed him in 1990 at Sullivan Stadium before it turned into Gillette. And then had dinner with him and a bunch of people at his brother-in-law's penthouse apartment in New York a bunch of years ago. That was amazing because, and I could see your marker on the floor here. You probably can't see it on television, but where RJ gets to stand, there's a picture of Conan. It's like the star where you stand. You have a
there he
marker.
is.
Yeah, there he is there.
Hey.
So I'm at this dinner in New York City.
Yeah.
And at the table was, Paul McCartney, Lorne Michaels, Conan O'Brien, Judy Collins, a bunch of others that I'm forgetting. I said Judy Collins, but the guy from Cheers, Woody Harrelson was there, and it was a bunch of celebs, and we all sat around and had a beautiful dinner with Paul. That was pretty amazing. So I've met Paul and interviewed him a bunch of times over the years. So I'm very lucky.
So you're also friends with Tony Bennett.
Yes.
How are you friends with him? Because you guys have known each other for what, 25 years now?
Yeah, because I was the first guy to play his music on a rock station. I also, not only having a Beatles show on WBCN, I also filled in for DJs every now and then. And I had asked the program director, you mind if I play some music by Tony? And back then, BCN played a lot of everything, back in those days. And he never forgot it. And I remained friends with him over the years, and his son Danny, who manages him. And we still, Danny and I talk still over the years, and still friends with him. So he's been very kind to me. Tony took me to the Super Bowl, took me to the White House, took me to London, to Abbey Road Studios, took me and my beautiful wife Stephanie there, and it was just an amazing place to be in Studio 2 where the Beatles recorded all their music. Really amazing.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I'm a lucky guy for what happened. Pretty great.
So let's talk about your show now.
Sure.
You are the host of Breakfast with the Beatles, now on
Yes.
Saturday mornings on
Yes.
WUMB. When did that show start, basically? Because that's changed homes with plenty of times.
It has.
Where was the origins of that show?
Well, that Breakfast with the Beatles goes back 30 years. No one really owns the name. It started somewhere in the country. It now exists in LA. It exists in Philly, and DC, and New York, and Boston. But back at BCN, I was given a Beatles show, and it was called Get Back to the Beatles. And then the station, continues to stay young while the audience was getting older. So we took the Beatles show off of BCN, and then we bought ZLX, and I ended up on WZLX for 14 years.
Yes.
And then just recently, we moved the show to WUMB for Saturday mornings for 2 hours. Which is pretty awesome. UMB is a great station. No commercials. That's a lot of fun.
No commercials, just
no
you
commercials for 2 hours.
You
And
must
then
love that.
I do love it. And we just recently started a podcast. I now have a podcast on a platform called pod617.com. And I do a talk show called Get Back to the Beatles. So that's a podcast.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so it's
So you
pretty
just
awesome.
have Beatle-y people who write
There's
Beatle
lots of
books
Beatle things going on,
and
yeah.
Beatle fans who've
Yeah,
gone to events
Beatle
and stuff.
fans.
That's really
and-
cool.
And we do events all the time. We have one coming up in Norwood, June 23rd. It's a Paul McCartney, Ringo Starr birthday party because the date is right between Paul's birthday and Ringo's.
Okay.
So we're having a big Paul McCartney, Ringo birthday party, so we're calling it our Pingo party.
Pingo!
Yes, it's at the Norwood Space Center, and tickets are available, so make sure you come. We have live Beatle music. And
So let me ask you, did Paul and Ringo get the invite?
No, they will
No?
not be available. Ringo's on tour, and
Okay.
Paul's away somewhere. So
I think
no,
he's
they
recording
won't
an
be
album
there.
now or
They won't be
something.
there in Norwood, but we'll have a lot of Beatle memorabilia on display and some panels and things like that. It's going to be a lot of fun.
So you've had a long life. You've worked with a lot of people like, no, you have,
Yes,
you
I
have.
have.
You work with a lot of people from like Charles Laquadaria to Carter Allen.
Charles inspired me, not only the Beatles, but Charles inspired me to work at BCN.
What was your relationship like with him?
Charles is one of the nicest, most generous people you'd ever want to meet. We just did a party at the Paradise where I hosted it, and it was in honor of his new digital memoir. Instead of writing a book, he wrote it for the internet for free for everyone to see. He came to Boston. We sold out the Paradise Theater, and I was the MC for the evening. And Charles is a dear friend, and I love the guy. He's been so generous to me, and that was the reason why I started in radio. I mailed him that letter, and if he didn't open it, or if it ended up somewhere, my life would never have gone this way.
Speaking of MCing, we have a photo of you, I think, on stage at a concert. And what I think, there you are. Is that a blue Sgt. Pepper suit? What is that?
Yes, that's a beautiful, beautiful picture there of. I did 5 shows with the Boston Pops.
You did?
Over the last 4 years or so. And what it is I narrated my interpretation of the Beatles story and interspersed with classical interpretations of their music. So we did 5 different shows at Symphony Hall. We sold them out. And for the last couple of shows, we had this idea. I think my beautiful wife Stephanie may have had this idea. I think it was. Steph, was it you that thought of that? Yes, I think it was. They wear the jacket. Yes, it was. And she was brilliant. She said, you know, you need to have a crazy encore, something really that's going to get people going. Because the previous one, I ran up and down the audience for the sing-along. But she said, why don't we get a pepper jacket? And then, you know, the encore was people applauding for the encore. We went backstage, put the jacket on, came out. People loved it. I'm running up and down the aisle. And that is my final bow at the end of the show.
That's awesome.
It was pretty awesome to be in front of, you know, hundreds, if not, you know, I don't know what the Symphony Hall holds, but a couple thousand, 3,000 people, 5 shows, pretty amazing.
That's really cool.
It was great.
We have a few more photos that I want to go over with you.
Let's look at them.
You have a photo where you met Lady Gaga.
Yes, I met Lady Gaga.
You met Lady Gaga.
Yes,
was this at a Tony event? That's the only thing I can imagine. It was.
It was at Tanglewood.
It was at Tanglewood,
yes. Okay. Stephanie and I went to Tanglewood by invitation of Tony to see the show. And we remember it because it was so funny that we got a police escort in. After we had dinner with Tony, we got a police escort into Tanglewood. And we were in my car, and, you know, there's a couple of Escalades with Tony and all his people. And they're just bringing us in, you know, with the sirens, and people all running up to my car, knocking on the passenger side window because everybody thought that my wife Stephanie was Gaga. And so they were all, oh, there's Lady Gaga. So
they thought you were Lady Gaga.
Yeah, her name's Stephanie too.
Okay, I mean, I guess if your name's Stephanie too, maybe they thought it was like okay.
You can see how lovely she is, and she could be mistaken for Lady Gaga.
Okay.
Say what? Who?
We didn't figure it out.
Yeah, they're coming up right to the glass. Hey, Lady Gaga. And so
Must
that
have felt
pretty.
like a Beatle then, right?
No, we felt like Lady Gaga.
Oh, you felt like Lady Gaga. Okay.
But it was pretty awesome. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
There's a few more photos that I want to go over with you.
Okay.
Is this you and Snoop Dogg? There's one of you, and I think this is Snoop Dogg. I think I've seen this before in your office.
That's Snoop. That's Oedipus. Oedipus in the middle there is the program director at WBCN, who taught me mostly everything I know about radio. And he's the guy that came up to me in like '85, before I haven't even been on the radio before. He came up to me and he said, "You like the Beatles, right?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Okay, you have a Beatles show starting on Sunday." But in the middle is Oedipus, and on the other side there is Snoop.
How did you meet him?
That was at Lollapalooza at Great Woods in Mansfield. And we were broadcasting live. Mark Perrino was on the air. And we interviewed Snoop on the air. And then Mark said, Snoop, you know, ChaChi here knows all of your music. And he's like, oh, okay. And so I sang for him live on the air. I did a little Snoop rap.
Did you really?
Yes, I did.
Would you like to do a little right now?
Yes, and the WLP, the D-O-double-G-Y, the D-O-double-G. Oh, come on, stop it.
Now, listen, I have to ask you.
Yes.
Was Snoop smelling of that Snoopy aroma?
The whole venue was.
Was it really?
Yes, the entire place was smelling, yes. But he was awesome. He autographed a bunch of stuff for me. I love Snoop. You know, he's the best.
That's amazing. Now, is this you? And I think is this Mayor Adam West?
I did meet Batman.
There's
There he
Batman.
is.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, Batman. That's pretty recent. That was in Wilmington at the Northeast Comic Con.
Yeah.
And I was invited in to host another thing with Pete Best, Beatles drummer, and Adam was there. And when Steph and I went backstage and hung out with him, and Steph will agree that half hour with him, he is the funniest guy, just so humorous. And he did a great Q&A of which we watched, just the funniest guy. He did an ID for me for the show, and it was sad when we lost him because, and Steph will tell you this, I still watch Batman on MeTV. I love Batman.
Awesome.
So it was great to meet him, and of course he's the mayor on Family Guy.
Yes,
so,
yes.
But just a humorous, funny guy, and it was really sad when we lost him.
Yes, and then I think there's one more. It's the very last one. Is this you and this is a local TV host? Who is this? Is that you?
Oh, gee. Okay. Now there I am with RJ and Jen, who were both students at Worcester State, where I spoke at Steve's
Jen,
Beatles
you want to come
class.
hang out with me and ChaChi? You look so lonely over there.
I'd love to hang out.
Come on over.
Come on, you can sit down. So I will
Hi,
tell
Jen.
you. I'll tell the audience that I spoke at this Beatles course, and these two befriended me after the show, after the discussion, and then they came to a couple of my Beatle events. And that picture was at our Beatles night at the Mendon Twin Drive-In. And
No, it
you
wasn't.
guys,
No, it wasn't.
sure it was.
No, it wasn't.
Where was it?
It was at Paul McCartney's concert.
Oh, okay. So
When you were outside, what was the hotel? You were doing some kind of live show. Yeah.
Oh, the Verb. at
Yeah,
Fenway
that's it.
Park. Okay, that's
all
when
look
we
the
met.
same, you know?
No, because I do remember you guys being at the drive-in. which
Yes,
was
we had
fun,
a great
too.
event. We had a great time
And
there.
we're gonna do another one this year. I'm waiting for the date.
Oh, please,
But yeah,
let me
that
know
was
when that's
Paul
happening.
McCartney at Fenway Park. I was broadcasting from the Verb. So that's
All right.
pretty awesome.
You brought along with you. You
Okay.
have an amazing. You're a huge Beatles fan. I'm sure
Yes.
everybody knows this. You have a wide array of collectibles
I
that
brought
you
a few
just
items.
that you just. I guess you hoard at your house.
I what?
Do you hoard these at your house?
No, we have things in storage, but we have things on display.
Okay.
So these are some of the things that were in my house. Now, please handle them very, very
I'll give
nicely.
these right to you because I'm sure they're
Oh,
they're
okay.
very
Okay.
cherished
They are. They are,
treasures
but
of
we
yours.
can open up the box here. And
Okay.
This is some old items and one or two new ones, but this is my favorite pillow. We have in plastic. It's being protected in our Beatle pillow here, which is awesome. Look at that, nice.
How
Love
long have you
that.
had this
That's
for?
a period piece. Oh, I've had that for so long.
Do you sleep on it at all? Is this how you
No,
go to
it's
bed at
why
night?
it's in the plastic.
I figured it was in the plastic so you don't like drool on it.
That's the case too, so it doesn't
Do
get
you have
damaged.
plastic on your couch at home?
No,
No?
my grandmother did.
Okay, see, I thought this would be
Yeah.
the same idea.
It's an Italian thing, you know, the
Yes,
plastic couches,
yes,
right?
this
So
is,
this is a fairly new item. There's a whole train set with Beatle cars, and I brought this because this is my favorite Beatle album. Well, the cover is one of my favorites. Meet the Beatles is my favorite album. People ask me that all the time. I'll put that down for now. And then we have something. This is pretty cool. The Beatles were on everything back at those merchandising days of the '60s, and kids would have their walls covered with Beatles wallpaper. And this is a rare, complete roll of Beatles wallpaper. They sell it by the foot on eBay, but this is an entire roll, so I really enjoy that. We keep that over here as well. And then back when the Beatles started, Capitol Records, they sent a memo out to all their employees that when you came to work, you had to wear a Beatle wig. Everyone had to wear a Beatle wig back in '64 if you worked for Capitol. And this is one of them. This is an authentic Beatle wig with the little heads still intact, which are great because a lot of people have them with the heads missing. But this is not a dead animal or anything. That's a Beatle wig in there. And that's an authentic Beatle wig. Never opened it. And then I have two other pieces. We'll save this one for next. And of course, when you're having a party at home, a dinner party, you want to serve drinks on this Beatle tray, which is cool. But this is a piece that I really love. The Beatles were on Newsweek magazine back in 1964 in February when they played the Ed Sullivan Show, and I bought this copy many, many years ago, and I always kept it, and I brought it with me 2 times to see a Beatle. I brought it to Paul and I brought it to Ringo, and they both autographed it. It's in plastic. I hope it doesn't So there it is. Cheers to ChaChi, autographed by Paul and by Ringo. There you go, Jim. You can take a look at it. I'm sorry, what is that? 54 years old. That's right,
That's
right.
wild.
This was February 24th, 1964, just weeks after their appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show. And on the back, I didn't even realize that this is a letter. When I was younger, when they were trying to deport John, they had petition slips that you could get and get a petition of all your friends and mail it in so the government would grant access, grant citizenship to John and Yoko.
Nixon wanted to kick him out of the country.
Yes,
Is that right?
Nixon thought he was trying to bring down the administration, which is totally wrong.
Okay.
But John was hanging out with some activists at the time, so Nixon took note of that. Hoover did as well. There's an FBI file on John. But I sent in lots of names. I would get everybody to sign it. Sent it in, and I got a thank you letter from the committee to keep John and Yoko in the country. And they sent me the letter thanking me. Years later, 1990 actually, I showed it to Yoko. She had never seen it, and she autographed the back for me down there. You can see. She's like, oh, I never saw this before. And I said, well, I got hundreds of names and sent them in, and she thanked me for that. So a few Beatle items that I thought I'd bring for the RJ talk show.
That is so
which
cool.
is great. So thank you very much.
That is so cool, ChaChi.
Thank you. We can move this off. Put it right down here.
I really want to thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure.
There's a lot of people that I've been doing this thing for 5 years. I've been doing TV and all this stuff for 5
I
years.
never knew you on TV for 5 years.
You didn't know this?
He never talks about it.
No,
I don't like to brag about myself that much.
No, but this is great to be here. I love Milford because one of my favorite restaurants is owned by a friend of mine by the name of Fred Sullivan,
Oh, yes.
and he owns the Alamo.
Yes.
So we're friends with Fred.
Do you want to get margaritas after the show? Jen, you and ChaChi after the show?
Well,
ChaChi, you were in for this, right? Mugs at your friend's?
I'll have a
Bills on them?
Diet Coke. I don't drink alcohol.
Hey, that's okay. You can drink whatever you want.
Thank you very much.
ChaChi, thank you
A
so much for
pleasure,
being here.
RJ.
ChaChi Loprette, everybody.
Thank you.
Breakfast with the
Thank you.
Beatles.
Thank you.
Saturday mornings, now on WUMB.
UMB. That's right.
The new home of Breakfast with the Beatles.
Thank you.